Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We have been engaged so far in what can only be described as a fascinating journey. A journey which could not have been undertaken for all these 1400 years. A journey which could only be undertaken now, after the town, after the return of the people to the town, only now. So if you do not find this information in the books of tafsir, do not be surprised. We return to that crucially important hadith, which is repeated something like 8 times in Sahih Bukhari alone, in which the Prophet ﷺ was asleep at the home of his wife Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he saw something terrible in his sleep. And he woke up from his sleep with his face flushed red. And he uttered these words, these ominous words, that every Palestinian is quite familiar with. He said, "Wailul lil Arab, woe unto the Arabs, min sharrin qad iktaraba, because of a shar, evil, great evil, which is now qareeb, which will now become close, iktaraba." And then he raised his hands and made a hole like this and said, "Today, a hole has been made in the rudder, the barrier bit by Zulkarnain," indicating that Allah is now bringing down the barrier. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّ جَعَلَهُ دَكَّاءَ. Allah is now bringing down the barrier. And once Allah brings down the barrier, the release of Gog and Magog will commence. She asked Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha, "An-nuhlika, will we be destroyed? وَفِينَا الصَّالِحُونَ, and while there are righteous people in our midst, would we still be destroyed?" He said, "Na'am, yes, the Arabs will be destroyed. When? إِذَا كَثُرَ الْخَبَثِ, when the timeline has been given by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He has actually given us the timeline for the destruction of the Arabs. When khabath prevails in the world, when the world is inundated with khabath, filth, the filth that comes from pornography, for example, khabath. And so you just have to look around you to see how close it is. How close it is. We are now living in a world more filthy than anything that mankind could ever have dreamed of. And the filth is coming from one direction. It's coming from that direction. From the direction of those who now today control power in the world. The head of the filth is, of course, pornography. It is also homosexuality and lesbianism. It is also feminine nudity, women are dressed and yet naked. It is also a preference, a strange and mysterious preference for sexual relations in public rather than private. That people would have sexual intercourse in public like donkeys, he said. That's coming. A strange and mysterious fascination with having sexual relations in a motor car parked in a park. So people passing by can take a look. It's happening already. And it's coming from one direction. It's coming from those who liberated Jerusalem and then brought Banu Israel back to Jerusalem, to the Holy Land, who presided over the creation of the State of Israel, and who have protected Israel until Israel could grow to become a superpower and be poised to take over the rule over the world. Those who today rule the world are a mysterious dual alliance. Dual. It is a mysterious Jewish-Christian alliance which has emerged in Europe and which has spread its tentacles around the world. They are the ones who are bringing the Sabbath to such an extent that it is now almost prevailing in the world. And so as we see the filth spreading, we know that the moment is at hand for the destruction of the Arabs. Wailul lil Arab. When the destruction of the Arabs takes place, the critics of this book would be silenced. But I want to take you now back to that spot in the Caucasus Mountains, because we want to fine-tune our attempt to identify Gog and Magog. It is not sufficient to say that Gog and Magog are the European Christians and European Jews. No, because amongst the European Christians and European Jews, there will be those who become Muslims, there will be those who are our friends and allies. Do not make the mistake of declaring of all Jews that they are your enemies, and all Christians, they are your enemies. That will be quite foolish. An American woman went to Israel and stood up in front of an Israeli bulldozer to protect a Palestinian home. And the bulldozer ran over her. The media, of course, buried it. Can you say of that woman that she is your enemy? Can you say of that woman that she is Gog and Magog, but she is white and she is American? So we would have peanuts in our heads if we make a blanket statement, all white people, or all Americans, or all Christians, or all Jews. Not at all. Don't fall in that trap. Let's fine-tune to try to locate Gog and Magog. We have to go to the Caucasus Mountains. And there at the Caucasus Mountains, we have to look for a people with power. There have to be a people whose power was greater than any other power in the world at that time. We have to look for a people who will eventually be moving from that northern area and moving towards Jerusalem. Shortly after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, something very mysterious happened in that part of the world that historians have chosen to bury. A tribe called the Khaza chose to embrace Judaism. And so the world witnessed for the first time the very strange phenomenon of a non-Semitic people becoming Jews. Non-Semitic becoming Jews. The genetic research is available on the internet. Anyone can study it. You had conferences, medical conferences, which were organized to study these people, their genetic composition. They had a genetic composition which was unique in all of mankind. No people in the world were like them. This is scientific research. And these people, the Khaza, chose to convert to Judaism, but they did so not for any religious reasons. They were not so much interested in the Kitab and to follow the law. They embraced Judaism for purposes of political expediency. They were sandwiched between Islam and Christianity, Byzantine Christianity, and they chose Judaism. These European Jews who have no racial, biological connection with the Banu Israel multiplied. وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ Nasl, they multiplied and breeded to such an extent that today 9 in every 10 Jews in the world, 90% or more, are European Jews. They outnumber the Semitic Jews by 9 to 1 or 10 to 1. These European Jews, if you look at the list of names of Nobel Prizes for science, for literature, would you name it? You will find that these are people who far exceed the rest of mankind in their intellectual brilliance, in their academic achievements, in their scientific research. They are a people different from the rest of mankind. And then you find that these Khaza who became Jews also chose to become Christians. So you have the Khaza infiltrating the camp of Judaism and infiltrating the camp of Christianity as well. And from the ranks of these Khaza Jews and Khaza Christians, the emergence of the Jewish-Christian alliance can be traced. It is this Jewish-Christian alliance, Khaza, which eventually gives birth to the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement has absolutely nothing to do with Banu Israel. It is an essentially and an exclusively European achievement. It is these Khaza who, having become Jews, first Jews and then Christians, who built an empire that was the most powerful in Europe and Central Asia. And when the armies of Islam had simultaneously defeated the two superpowers in the world, the Persian Empire and Byzantium, and had emerged as the most powerful military force in the world, Khaza blocked our way. We could not defeat them. And so it would be quite correct to say that the Khaza demonstrated a military power without equal in the world at that time. It is from this part of the world that they spread out. They spread out to Eastern Europe, they spread to Russia, and eventually crossed the sea to the United States. And they are at the heart of the revolutions which transformed Europe from Christendom into modern Western civilization. They are at the heart of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, which overturned Christianity in Russia. They are at the heart of the French Revolution, in consequence of which the back of the Christian church is broken. The prohibition of riba is now consigned to the garbage bin. And they are at the heart of the creation of the Zionist movement. It is these Khaza, Jewish and Christian, who now move to the Holy Land, assisted by a strange and mysterious Jewish Holocaust. And the history of that will one day be revealed on Judgment Day. How much was their input into the Holocaust? So that you have an exodus now of these European Jews to the Holy Land. When the state of Israel comes into being, who it is who controls power in Israel? Not the Oriental Jews, the darker-skinned Jews. No, they are second-class citizens. The ones who control power in Israel are the European Jews. There is the last part of this analysis, which is absolutely fascinating. I have to confess that I enjoyed writing this book. I know that we'll have to write a second edition because there are very important parts which are left out for size. But here is the hadith. that after Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns, and after he kills Dajjal, the hadith says, فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ يَأْجُوجَ وَمَأْجُوجَ. Allah will send Gog and Magog. I think the meaning here is He will send them now to their final destruction. This is the sending. And they will pass by the Sea of Galilee, which is when it's going to go dry. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam will be targeted. They won't spare him. And he will go up the mountain, which is a mountain in Baytul Maqdis, Sahih Muslim. And the believers will go up the mountain with him. And Gog and Magog will then say, now listen carefully, we have killed those on earth. Now let us kill those in the heavens above. And they will shoot their arrows up into the sky. And Allah will allow the arrows to come back down with blood. And then Nabi Isa alayhi salam will make dua to Allah to destroy them. And Allah will send something like a tiny little insect, a virus, something, which attacks them at the top of the spine. And they display an amazing incapacity to defend themselves. The immune system seemed to have collapsed completely. And this little insignificant biological attack, that's all it takes. And they fall down, paralyzed. And by next morning, not only are they dead, but their bodies are decomposing and smelling stink. And then Allah's messenger, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, will pray to Allah and he will send birds, prehistoric birds, whose necks will be like camels. And they will pick up these bodies and take them where Allah ordains that they be disposed of. This is a crucially important hadith that I have chosen not to deal with in detail in this book, because I don't think that I have fathomed it enough. But this much I recognize, that we're dealing with a Gog and Magog confrontation which would involve what today is called Star Wars. Missile technology that would send missiles up into the sky, a war involving missiles up in the heavens. Why would you send missiles up in the sky? Because you have a spy station up there. And they're directing their war from there. So if you want to defeat them here on the earth, you're going to have to destroy that revolving spy station up there. I want to suggest to you that the coming Gog and Magog confrontation, we have defeated those on earth, now let us defeat those in the heavens above, is a confrontation between Gog and Magog which will leave both Gog and Magog eventually paralyzed. So I have to look in the region of the Caucasus Mountains, north of the Caucasus, I have to look for those who have the capacity for sending the arrows up into the sky, the missiles, the Star Wars technology. I know that Gog and Magog are working in tandem with Dajjal. And the objective is that Dajjal must establish his rule over the whole of mankind. And he's using Gog and Magog as his foot soldiers. If one people are to rule the world, and you have two people with equal power, Gog and Magog, then the one has to establish its authority over the other. Gog has to rule Magog, or Magog has to rule Gog. Do I need to continue the lecture? Or have you already understood it? We must locate two centers of power in the world, both seemingly indestructible, both matchless in the world, both with a capacity for Star Wars, and one attempting to establish its rule over the whole world, and therefore its rule over Magog, and Magog resisting. Not the Chinese. Chinese are businessmen. The Chinese are businessmen. How much do you offer? But the Russians will never submit. Russia is precisely such a power that Russia can stand up. Russia gave them a bloody dose in Georgia just a year ago. And Russia is in a fighting mood. They have been circling Russia, NATO, building an offensive nuclear missile capacity around Russia, taking the former states of the Soviet Union and bringing them into NATO. The last one now, which remains, I think Ukraine, there's still some tussle going on, but Georgia is the one they're trying to get. And so we can now comfortably lean back and relax, because we know what's coming ahead. It's going to be a Star Wars confrontation between Russia on the one hand and its allies, which refuses to submit to someone ruling the world from Jerusalem, and therefore refuses to submit to the Anglo-American-Israeli alliance of the West. And this side with an obstinate, pig-headed, irrational determination, we will have to impose our rule over Russia, regardless of consequences. And this leads to the confrontation, the Star Wars conflict, which is coming ahead of us. And that Star Wars conflict, when it takes place, will be mutually destructive. And when it is mutually destructive, when nuclear weapons are used on such a mass scale, I think it is not far-fetched for us to believe that the capacity for electronic warfare will cease. And so it's horses once more. It's horses once more. It's conventional warfare once more. And Israel had been set up by the European Jewish-Christian Alliance, set up And now Banu Israel are left defenseless to face the army of Islam. It is at that time when Gog and Magog are gone, when Dajjal has been killed, that Allah's words will be remembered. وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا. If you come back to the Holy Land with your wickedness and oppression, I will return with my punishment. And so a Muslim army now attacks and destroys this imposter state of Israel. At that time, said Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ. I quoted this hadith at the State University of New York in Stony Brook with the Jews sitting in front of me. And they went and they complained to the head of the university. I said, what did I do? If I don't have the freedom to quote the Quran and the Hadith, I might as well go and plant peas. Where is your freedom? لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ. You will most certainly fight the Jews. وَلَتَقْتُلُنَّهُمْ. And you will most certainly kill them. حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرُ. At that time even the stones will speak. Because the stones will have a higher sense of morality than those stones which inhabit their hearts. حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرُ. At that time even the stones will speak. Ya Muslim, O Muslim, هَذَا يَهُودِيٌّ وَرَائِي فَتَعَالَ فَاقْتُلْ. There's a Jew hiding behind me. So come and kill him. Not all Jews. No. Because there'll be other Jews who'll be with us, standing up to face an Israeli tank, giving their lives in standing up to oppression. So not all Jews. No. Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is talking about the Jew who is the agent of oppression. This is the one. There's a Jew hiding behind me, so come and kill him. We are now able, therefore, to offer, and all that we're doing is offering a preliminary opinion of identifying Gog and Magog in terms of the centers of power, not individual. Don't ask me for names, because we have Gog and Magog in Egypt as well now. And I'm reliably informed there are Gog and Magog in Islamabad, in Pakistan as well. And you have Gog and Magog all over the world. So don't ask for names. We now are in a position to offer what can best be described as a preliminary opinion, which is now subject to the critical examination by the Ummah, by the scholars. And a scholar would not take this book and refute it, rip it apart, by simply searching, where can I find a little crack in it? That's not scholarship. A scholar will go through it and see what is there in this which convinces me that it is the truth, and what is there in this where my brother may have fallen short in his analysis or may have erred, and then would respectfully offer an opinion to correct something where I may have gone wrong. That's scholarship. So now we have completed our explanation of the subject of Gog and Magog. It's probably the first time that this kind of an explanation has been offered in our history as an ummah. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us if we have erred, and to kindly increase for us our knowledge of the subject. We now have half an hour. And in this half an hour, we can take subjects on Gog and Magog, and also on the previous subject of the feminist revolution. Are you ready with the microphone? Yes, Yusuf. Please keep the mic close to you so I can hear. I'm an old man now.
Rahman Rahim. Actually, I have a two-part question. The first, is it reasonable to assume that when the Prophet ﷺ said "Waylu lil Arab," that he was talking about the Semitic Arab as well as the linguistic Arab, the one that holds the Quran dear and continues to recite it and so forth? And also, when it's referred to in the hadith that the smoke will come and kill everybody, but it only give the believers a cold or a runny nose, could it be assumed that this is because the true believers would have foresaw what was coming and were so far removed from the major cities where this stuff would take place that the pollution didn't get to them?
We have a problem of acoustics here. You may be able to hear him properly, but for me there's an echo. So I didn't catch all that he said, and we're going to be wasting time if you have to repeat a question over and over and over again for me to be able to understand. Could you come close up to me? Yeah. Sisters, in fact, better if you could just write out your questions quickly. That saves us time. Yeah.
I was saying that, is it safe to assume that when the Prophet said "Waylu lil Arab," that he was talking about the Semitic Arab as well as the linguistic Arab who hold the Quran close to them and continues to recite it and so forth? And when in the hadith where it stated that the smoke will kill everybody except for the true believers who would only get a runny nose, is that because they would be so far removed from the major cities where this would take place?
Okay. Waylul lil Arab, said the Prophet ﷺ. And Yusuf is asking, which Arabs are going to be destroyed? Would it be the Arabs who are, racially Arabs, in terms of their racial composition, the Semitic people? Or would be those also in the periphery who are not Arabs in terms of race, but have acquired the Arabic language, like Sudan? I believe that the destruction of the Arabs is in consequence of the physical proximity in and around the Holy Land. That's where the threat is. And so the Arabs who are going to be destroyed would appear to me to be those who are in and around the Holy Land. How far out, only Allah knows, but definitely in and around the Holy Land. After Nabi Isa alayhi salam dies, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said that he'll be buried next to me in Medina. And I gave this lecture, I think, in Sydney. And next morning I got an email, Sheikh Imran, where did you get this information that Jesus is going to be buried next to you? Nabi Muhammad said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that Nabi Isa alayhi salam will be buried next to him. After Nabi Isa alayhi salam has died, the historical process has reached its end, its culmination. There are no more pages left to be turned. All that remains now is the mopping up. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala releases into the world something which may be described as a gas. And whoever has even a grain of a mustard seed of faith in the heart would inhale the gas. Wherever you are, even in a cave, in a mountain, and you would die. And the only people left on the earth after that would be those who have no faith. There'll be no one on the earth saying Allah, Allah. Meaning, saying Allah, Allah with the heart. So if after that you see Maulana with his head down, quoting Quran and Hadith, after the gas is gone, you know, he survived the gas. Despite a mountain of knowledge of Quran and Hadith, he survived the gas. Amongst those people, a man would pass and see two people committing sexual intercourse in public. And he would say to the man, this is the most righteous that you would find. Can't you at least take her behind the wall? Can't you at least take her behind the wall? I don't know about the runny nose. That hadith never came to me. Any other questions, or have you written your questions as yet? It'll be helpful to me if you write them down. Save time. Yes, next one.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Sheikh Imran.
Wa alaikum salam.
I had someone wanted me to...
Come close to me. Save time.
Someone wanted me to ask you your opinions on 2012.
2012, okay. Yesterday, in the political analysis, we said that Israel will have to dramatically expand its territory to encompass the biblical frontiers of the Holy Land. Whoever wrote the Bible, whoever rewrote the Bible, read Richard Friedman's book, please. Richard Friedman, an eminent American scholar of the Bible, PhD from Harvard. And his book was, Who Wrote the Bible? You will not regret reading that book. Whatever is written in that book confirms what Allah has said in the Quran. Whoever rewrote the Torah decided that the Holy Land extends from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. Why? Why did he say that? And there's a certain part of the frontiers of the Holy Land which have not been put into the Bible, but I know it. What he did was to say that wherever the Jews lived in exile, at that time is a part of the Holy Land. And since Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam took the Jews to Misr, and Misr is not the whole of Egypt. Today Misr is the whole of Egypt. But at that time Misr was the eastern delta between the Red Sea and the River Nile, the fertile eastern delta. That's where the Jews lived, the Israelite people. So he says from the river of Egypt, meaning the eastern delta where the Israelite people lived for 300-400 years, to the river Euphrates, because they were taken to exile in Babylon. Exiled in Babylon, they were enslaved in Babylon. So that's why the river Euphrates. But remember, the Jews also went to Medina. The Jews also lived in Medina. And so it is likely when Israel makes the effort to extend the territorial frontiers of the state to encompass the biblical frontiers, it is possible that there will be an attack on Medina, in addition to one to Egypt. And then Israel takes control of the Suez Canal. Israel controls the oil of the Gulf. I want to suggest to you that Israel is planning that big war. And Israel will use weapons of war never used before in history. I want to suggest to you that I did yesterday that Israel cannot make that move, while a significant military threat still remains in the hands of Muslims. And so the Pakistani nuclear weapons and the Pakistani nuclear plants have to be destroyed by the hook or by the crook. And the invasion of Afghanistan from 9/11, in consequence of 9/11, is part and parcel of a big plan to eventually destroy Pakistan's nuclear weapons. And all the maneuverings taking place now, because that is the target. In December of 2001, just 2 months or 3 months after 9/11, I published a booklet entitled A Muslim Response to the Attack on America. We've got the booklet here. And in that booklet, I argued that the target is Pakistan's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons. I also argued that in order for them to be able to move in and destroy Pakistan's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons, they will have to provoke civil war in Pakistan. And that's what they're trying to do now. If elements within the Pakistan armed forces were to rebel against the military command in Pakistan and the government, and fighting were to break out within the Pakistan armed forces, that would be the cue for them to move in to save the world from a nuclear threat. Once they dispose of Pakistan's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons, and to an extent Iran's missile capacity, then 2012 would be, I believe, all the hype about 2012 is meant to prepare the world for something big. Everybody is waiting for something big. So let's not disappoint them. And 2012 perhaps can witness Israel's big war, the use of nuclear weapons in Israel's war. And eventually it will then become clear that Israel has replaced the United States as the ruling state in the world. A defining moment in history for the transfer of power from the United States to Israel to be recognized by the rest of mankind. No more questions, please. Well, this is a nice question. How do we look for a wife? Well, you have been able to see, haven't you? We have very beautiful women here in Trinidad. Don't we? And we did put, didn't we, in the registration, those looking for a wife? When you're looking for a wife, said the Prophet ﷺ, look at her. He said, there are some women who have a defect in the eyes, may not be pleasing to you. So look at her. If in her physical appearance she is pleasing to you, and remember, not all trees are ornamental trees. If a handsome man were to marry a stunningly beautiful woman, they're going to have a lot of headaches in that marriage. Yes. But if a handsome man were to marry a woman who would care for him, then you have a sort of a complementarity there. So look at her and see whether her appearance is appealing to you. And then look to her public life to see whether in her public life she displays faith and righteousness of conduct. Don't go digging into her private life. She may have done something and Allah covered it. She made tawbah. No, we have enough questions here now. Allah covered it. And if you go digging in the private lives of others, Allah will one day uncover all that you did and that was covered. That's all you need to look for a wife. When the rabbis asked the three questions and the answers were given to them, how did they respond? There was only one response that we have any data about. Question number one was ask him about the young men in the cave and the wondrous story, Ashabul Kahf. Question number two was ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the earth. Question number three was a tricky question. Ask him about the ruh. The ruh could be Jibreel alayhi salam. The ruh could be the human ruh. And the ruh could be the divine ruh. Does Allah have ruh? وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. And I breathed it into him of my ruh. Which one? And the answer that was given was an answer that was entirely appropriate in response to the tricky question. قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Say this to them, say only this to them, say nothing more than this to them. That the ruh is by Allah's command. وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ عِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And on this subject, you've been given only a little bit of knowledge. He has the knowledge. Come to him. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. You say you are the elite of mankind. You say you have direct dialing with the Lord above. You say heaven is reserved for you, but he has the knowledge. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. So they didn't like that answer. So they wanted to make sure, listen, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, who is Allah referring to? Us? When he said, you've been given only a little bit of knowledge. Is he referring to us or to those pagan Arabs? And the Prophet replied, and I wish I could see the video one day. He said both. He said both. This is the only data we have of how they responded when the three answers came. You said that Gog and Magog would not actually drink up the water. It is symbolic, the drinking. It's actually consuming the water. Is it possible that in the same way that the language drinking the water is to be understood and interpreted symbolically, that the entire subject is symbolic? No. The Quran refers to Gog and Magog. as entities, concrete entities. And Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said that they are human beings, they are Banu Adam, they are human beings. Is it possible, since the feminist revolution has brought some good to the world, oh, Dajjal is not a fool. Dajjal is someone created by Allah. Dajjal is someone who is programmed by Allah. It is not Shaitan who has created Dajjal, Allah has created him. And Allah has programmed Dajjal. Can Allah create evil? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. Say, I seek refuge with the Rabb of the Falaq, the dawn, from the shar which He has created, the evil which He has created. He never created human beings as evil. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Human beings have been created in the best form. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. And we have honored the progeny of Adam. Human beings are not created evil. Iblis was not created evil, no. Iblis chose to disobey. So where is the evil that Allah created? Where? The evil that Allah created cannot be other than Dajjal and Gog and Magog. Yes, the feminist revolution does have in it that which we can identify as beneficial, as good. Tomorrow when we look at politics, we'll see that in the modern state, the modern secular state, there are aspects of the modern secular state that are commendable. And it is improper scholarship for you to simply condemn wholesale. Rather, you should discriminate between that which is beneficial and that which is harmful. But the beneficial part, the 90% that is good, is there so that the 10% that is poison can slip in. So don't pay attention to the 90% that is good and in the process ignore the 10% that is poison, because that is there to allow this to penetrate you. Can Dajjal enter the Muslim village? When Tamim ad-Dari met Dajjal on that island, which we said was Britain, and he had questioned Tamim ad-Dari, among other things, about is there any water left in the Sea of Galilee. He then declared, I am Dajjal. And he warned that I will enter every town and every city. But he never mentioned villages. And as a consequence of that statement of his, we can now understand why, for the first time in human history, for the first time, we have the phenomenon of the emergence of mega cities, 20 million people in a city, 10 million people in a city, 50 million people living in what can best be described as the equivalent of a fowl coop, the place where you keep fowl, in Hong Kong. See how they live in Hong Kong. In Singapore, one generation and a second and a third generation, and from generation to generation, all that you know is living in a flat. That's all. You never have the earth underneath your feet. You can never play amongst the flowers. You come outside of your front door. You're living always in an apartment. Mega cities, because Dajjal will find it easier to control mankind, easier to corrupt and destroy people when he has them in these large conglomerates, the cities. But if you move out of the cities to small villages, Dajjal is going to have a bottle of Tylenol tablets, headache tablets to take. He's going to have monstrous headaches. How can I deal with them when they're fanning out into small, remote villages where it is now far more difficult for me to attack them without revealing myself and exposing myself? So the Muslim village will be safer. وَإِذِ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا عَبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ. If you fan out into the remote countryside and you do it for the sake of preserving your faith, يَنْشُرْ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ مِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ. Allah will shower you with His mercy. Two more and we'll be finished. The hadith on Sham and Yemen. Allahumma barik lana fi Shamina wa Yemenina. We leave this for question for tomorrow. What's going to happen with Iran? There is no more. Or announcement. There is an essay in this book, Will Israel Attack Iran? It was written 4 years ago, 2005. Will Israel attack Iran? The analysis is still valid. If the Anglo-American-Israeli alliance can make a deal with Iran over Russia's head, to bypass Russia and make a deal with Iran, that we'll offer you Shia control over the Sunni world, and Iran accepts that deal and dismantles whatever Israel considers to be a threat, then there will be no attack on Iran. But the direction in which we are moving is one in which Iran is increasingly demonstrating a preference for an alliance with Russia, an alliance with Rome, that's what is in the hadith, over a deal with the Western world. So long as Iran remains in that state of preferring an alliance with Russia, it is inevitable that they'll eventually attack Iran. This is the end of this session, and tomorrow we come back for the last day of the retreat. At 5 o'clock, here we are. Buses will be here at 4:30 sharp, and we'll be leaving at 5 o'clock sharp to Islamic Missionaries Guild, one of the organizing bodies, in a place called Kelly. Those of you who are interested in doing some shopping, you get on one bus, while the others who want to have dinner will go on the other bus to Kelly. So the first bus you have to do without dinner. No, I'm only kidding. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Someone left a wristwatch here?